would like to thank all my colleagues who helped organizing this event. I want to particularly express my deep gratitude to Ilia State University, who is not only hosting this event and this celebration, but is also hosting our Georgia branch on its campus. We will open an office on Ilia State University campus. Also, I want to thank Education and Training International Group, PAM, thank you very much for sponsoring our event, and the PHP Wine Cellars who provided all your wardrobe, especially bottled wine, especially for this event. As you may already know from our invitations and press releases, this event is also dedicated to 150th anniversary of Sir Oliver Wardrobe, one of the most prominent Western diplomats who played like immense role in the history of Georgia. And I would like to thank Professor Stephen Jones, who is also Vice President of ARISC, for joining us today, as well as Beka, who is the young researcher who did all his best, his utmost, so to say, to remind the significance of wardrobe's work to Georgian society and to work the world as well. So thank you very much. Now I would like to ask Pam to say a few words.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, firstly I would like to start by congratulating ARISC on the opening of their Georgia office and wishing them every success in the future. I would also like to thank them for offering this opportunity to bring the history of Sir Oliver Wardrobe to a wider audience. And not just to a Georgian-speaking audience, but there are a lot of people living in Georgia, people visiting in Georgia, sometimes for the first time, sometimes they've been here many times, but who don't know a lot about the history of Georgia. And even though Sir Oliver Wardrobe is from the UK, they may not have heard very much about him and about the role that he played. I would like to introduce Education and International, who I represent. We've been operating in Georgia for over 20 years now, and it's a pleasure to be able to commemorate the anniversary of Oliver Wardrobe's birth in this way. I think if you look around at what's happening in the world at the moment, you see the importance of past events and past relationships, even on the current situation. And it's wonderful to have an opportunity to celebrate the role of someone who, although they lived a long time ago, their actions are still remembered and much appreciated today. I think it's a testament to the significance of one person's actions that Sir Wardrobe was able to quite measurably alter the perception of the British Foreign Office regarding Georgia and its position in the region. And you'll hear much more about this from Professor Jones and Beka later on. I hope very much that you enjoy the presentations, and thank you very much. This is a lovely opportunity to celebrate somebody, a British person who brought so much to Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol, very much. Beka will also say a few words on behalf of Ilia.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, thank you very much for coming to the University. I'm very much privileged to welcome you in the name of our university, and we are very proud to welcome the Central Branch at our campuses. As Diana already mentioned, we were from the very beginning very much interested to host the center here, and we hope that will contribute to our international project and international, let's say, efforts, which is the main direction of our work at the state right now. Even though we are quite young institution in Georgia, since 2006, active at the university, we have achieved some results in that direction. That's why I think that we will be an interesting partner and reliable partner. Today we host interesting event, and I'm sure we will have a series of interesting lecture discussions, and the state will be always open to our partners, and I hope that I'm quite sure that we will also develop some joint projects in the future. Again, once more, thank you very much for coming to Ilia State, and well, I wish you all the success for our marriage.
Thank you for your wishes. And finally, I would like to ask Professor Stephen Jones, our dearest professor, and host also of this event on behalf of ours.
Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming. I want to thank also Ilia State University for hosting us and the visit of the Deputy Ambassador of the British Embassy. I'm here in, I guess, 2 or 3 capacities. As Diana pointed out, I am Vice President of ARISCI, the American Research Institute for the South Caucasus. It's an institute that has 17 institutional members in the United States, including many of the top universities like Cornell, Indiana University, Stanford University, and my own little liberal arts college at Mount Holyoke. It is a very active organization. In April of this year, for example, we had a conference called Caucasian Connections, and we brought many scholars from the Caucasus to the campus of Indiana University in the United States and had a wonderful conference. And we're looking forward to maybe getting some publications out of that conference. We also have grants and fellowships, mostly unfortunately for American scholars, but the aim, of course, is to promote connections between US scholars and Georgian scholars. ARISCI is strongly involved in the Work in Progress program, which Tim Narlos, sitting over there, has founded, initiated, and continues to promote. ARISCI is very often very much part of that program, and it's a very productive one too. The other reason I'm here is to just introduce you to Beka, a wonderful young scholar who I got to know 2 years ago. I am also working on the First Republic, so I know a little bit about Oliver Wardrop, but I don't know half as much as Beka does. So I'm not going to say very much about Oliver Wardrop, although I'll say something about him. And the other part of this, of course, is although I've been working in the United States for 25 years, I am actually British, and I still have my passport, so I'm a compatriot of Oliver Wardrop. And not only that, I studied in Oxford for a while with the support of the Marjorie Wardrop stipend, which was very important to my development as a scholar of Georgian studies. I certainly couldn't have survived without 3 years of the Marjorie Wardrop stipend to get me through some very poor days in my postgraduate studies. So that was extremely important to me. So I feel I have a special obligation to Oliver Wardrop. So just to say a few things about Wardrop himself, he of course made great contributions to Georgian scholarship. He was, along with his sister Marjorie, one of the first Westerners who took a deep interest in Georgian history. He first traveled to Georgia in 1888, and I hope I'm not taking too much wind out of the sails here, Rebecca, but just a few notes on his biography. A good young Scottish lad from Midlothian who, not from a particularly upper-class background, but did very well because he was a very smart young polyglot. He learned languages very quickly and very easily, and one of those languages he took great interest in was Georgian. And he did his grand tour sometime in the mid-1880s and ended up in Georgia in 1888. His first trip, he made many subsequent trips to Georgia, became a member of the diplomatic service, wrote and translated, along with his sister Marjorie, many books. The first book that he he wrote, for example, was called The Kingdom of Georgia, the Land of Wine, Women and Song. So you can guess he had a very good time in Georgia with a title like that. But really, both Oliver and Marjorie brought a great deal to historical scholarship on Georgia, and of course the legacy that they left has been extremely important. Many manuscripts and books in the Bodleian Library in Oxford, the Marjorie Wardrop Fund that I've already mentioned, and the fund which still operates, by the way, in the Faculty of Oriental Studies at the University of Oxford, and is still funding British scholars interested in the history and politics of Georgia. A very interesting man who joined the British diplomatic service. After his first trips to Georgia, he goes back to the UK. He begins to establish organizations in support of Georgia, and finds his way back to St. Petersburg in 1905 and again in 1917, when he's the Consul General in St. Petersburg. And then the peak of his career, of course, is when he meets with Lord Curzon, who at that time is the Foreign Secretary in the British government, and he is appointed the Chief Commissioner, Chief British Commissioner for the Transcaucasus, as it was then called. So he represented British interests for a little more than a year, from 1919 to 1920. He was very important in lobbying for Georgian interests, and was instrumental in getting the de facto recognition of Georgia in January of 1920 by the British, the French, and the Italians, and Beka will give you more detail on that. So he was very important in achieving all that. He did get sick and had to return to the UK in the summer of 1920, but he continued to support Georgia in every way possible that he could, and then lived a long life until 1948, when he died. But as I say, there's a great legacy that he's left. So I'm very glad that Ilia State supports this initiative. I'm very grateful to Beka in particular, who's been so instrumental in reviving the interest in all of his legacy. So with those words, I would like to pass it back to Diane, and we'll take it further. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I would like to ask Beka to join us over here and say a couple of words about wardrobe.
Good evening, everybody. I'm afraid that a couple of words will not be enough, and my speech is going to be a bit longer than the ones of the previous guys. So, first of all, I want to introduce myself because I'm not as much distinguished as Professor John, so I have to say a couple of words about myself. I'm Beka Kobakidze, PhD student at the Kuveysi State University, hopefully PhD in several months. And I have been researching wardrobe's biography particularly, but not only that, British-Georgian relationship since several years based on Georgian, British, and various international sources. So, and now I'm going to tell you how I got interested in wardrobes and how I came across with them. What did we know about wardrobes until now? We have to, what I have been trying is to overcome Soviet legacy. During Soviet times, wardrobes were pretty much appreciated, but we knew only about the culture. So we knew that they were great translators. They translated like in Panteraskin, or Georgian poetry and prose, but nothing about the diplomacy. because Wardrop was one of the most active anti-Bolshevik British diplomats who served in, as Dr. Jonssi mentioned already, in Soviet Russia as a consul general. And then always it was Marjorie who was pretty much mentioned, and then Oliver Ward was kind of appendix to Marjorie. You know, understanding something like that. You know, Oliver was also a good guy. His sister was translating, but he, to some extent, also was contributing. But Oliver Wardrop had 31 years career in the Foreign Office. And what we all historians knew was only the fact that Oliver Wardrop notified Georgian government on international de facto recognition of Georgia, and that's it. But then I started working on my monograph and dissertation, the question of Georgia at the Paris Conference, and then I went to the British National Archive, to the Oxford Bodleian Library, and I started reading reports, daily reports of Wardrop from Tiflis, as it was called at that time, from Tiflis to Foreign Office, and I was absolutely amazed, astonished that even most nationalist Georgian could not write it better about Georgia than Wardrop did. And then I realized that nobody in my country knows of his contribution, and I saw it my obligation, my duty to revive his name and to acknowledge his contribution to Georgia. Then thanks to some people supporting me, and some of them you have here, but some others unfortunately are not today with us, we had some success. So, for example, on 150 years anniversary on 10th of October of this year, in the National Library of Georgia, foreign books reading room was named after sibling Wardrops, and then exhibition was opened in the Museum of Theatre and Cinema, Wardrops and Georgia, which was attended by the Her Excellency British Ambassador and the current Georgian Foreign Minister and various Georgian officials. And on 25th of October, Wardrop Square was opened in the very center of Tbilisi. And as it's promised, and I saw it's included in the budget of Tbilisi budget of 2015, we are going to have Wardrop's monument in that square. And I want to express my gratitude to, particularly to MP, Parliament Member Freedom Sabarelidze. I was the one who was generating ideas, and Freedom was the one who was knocking on the doors and bringing the issues to the relevant people. And I want to express my gratitude to the Chairman of Georgian Parliament, Tbilisi Mayor, and so on and so forth. I mean, I might miss someone because there were so many people contributing. And most importantly, why we decided to have today's event, because all this chain of events which I just listed went on in Georgian. But I wanted to target today Western residents residing in Tbilisi, and I wanted to say that there was one British who did a lot for this country, and Georgians don't fail to give gratitude for it. It's a very good political message, I believe, because when there was this Wardrop Square, one diplomat or just any foreigner says the Wardrop Square in the very center of Tbilisi and asks who the Wardrop. Wardrop was the guy who contributed to this country, so that's a sign of the gratitude from Georgian side. And I think we encourage our foreign friends to do a good job for our country. Okay, now I'm gonna switch to what was happening a century ago. Dr. Jones already talked about how water was connected to Georgia at the end of the 19th century, but I'll talk now particularly about the Republican period of Georgian independence, of the First Republic of Georgia. So in 1917, Russian Tsarist Empire collapsed, and then it was a very turbulent period for whole Russia, and particularly for the Caucasus and Georgia. And on 7th of November 1917, the coup d'etat took place in Soviet Moscow and St. Petersburg. Caucasus was thrown out from the Russian politics, and two republics of Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan established federation of the Caucasus. And then troops came in order to conquer some southeast part of Georgia and Armenia. But Georgia was forced to ask for German help, German support, which was at that time ally of Turkey, of Ottoman Empire. And with the German help, Georgia was rescued, and the whole Caucasus was rescued from the Turkish yoke. But since Russia was switched off the war, England, Great Britain, and France gathered on the conference in December 1917 just to decide what to do with this political vacuum and military vacuum which took place due to the Russian revolutions and turbulent time in Russia. And it was decided that Great Britain would take responsibility over Transcaucasia, and responsibility of France would be Crimea and Ukraine. But this treaty was not effective until the end of the World War I. And in 1918, in November, Germany signed armistice with victorious powers, and then Brits came in, and British had to decide what to do with the Caucasus, because it was a absolutely new territory for them, because just before the war it was internal affair of Tsarist Russia. And from October and November 1918, in the Foreign Office, they started up talks. What should we do with the Caucasus? And it was Wardrop at that time working for the Political Intelligence Department, who drew memorandums on Georgia and the Caucasus. And if you read those reports, you might think that those are written by the most nationalistic Georgians. But there was nobody else in British Foreign Office who knew more than him in British political elite. So his ideas went through. And at the end of 1918, in December, with the support of Lord Curzon, a Georgian delegation was sent a diplomatic note, that Great Britain welcomed the declaration of Georgian independence and is ready to support its international recognition at the Paris Peace Conference. But implementation of the ideas of the Foreign Office, for the implementation was responsible British War Office, which had some different ideas than the Foreign Office. In charge of the War Office at that time was Sir Winston Churchill, later well-known Prime Minister of Great Britain. But Winston Churchill was extremely supportive to the White Russian cause. White Russians were the generals, Tsarist generals, who organized armies in order to conquer Moscow and St. Petersburg, to arrest Bolsheviks, restore Russian Empire, and then to go down to the Caucasus and all so-called border nationalities. With the very strong support of and strong presence of Winston Churchill, War Office allocated 100 billion pounds aid to the white generals. And then he instructed his generals down to the Caucasus that their first priority was supposed to be support to the Denikin, but not to Georgia. And it was quite contradictory situation when Georgian delegation received a letter from the Foreign Office saying that we welcome Georgian independence, and on the other hand, on the spot, British generals acted slightly different way. So, for example, I'm going to give you an extract from the letter of General George Milk, who was the commander of the British Kuveyt troops, and he sent this telegram to his immediate superior, Chief of Imperial General Staff, Sir Henry Wilson. So, it read as follows. I'm fully aware that the withdrawal of the British troops will probably lead to anarchy, but I cannot see that the world would lose much if the whole of the inhabitants of the country cut each other's throats. They are certainly not worth the life of one British soldier. I think it wants to be clearly understood at home that if we accept responsibility to help these countries, we will have to retain troops not only for 1 or 2 years, but possibly for 10 years. While the education of the people to manage their own affairs will be the work of several generations. I have never seen more miserable country or people. So it was very hard for, Mill here on the spot was not only military, but he was kind of diplomat as well. And he and the military is like sort of qualification to implement their diplomatic roles. He was the first time to the region, and it was very hard for him to make difference between the Bolshevik red flag, which was flying, which was swinging in Moscow, and the Menshevik red flag, which was in Tbilisi, because in charge of Georgian government at that time were Mensheviks. And the report of Mill and one of other generals destroyed Georgian reputation absolutely, which was clearly made by Woodrow at the end of 1918. And Georgians at that moment were quite unhappy with the British military presence, but at the same time, all of the Caucasus wanted them to stay because it was them, all the British militaries, which prevented Denikin from conquest of the region. And in such a bad situation, War Office decided to evacuate troops from the Caucasus, and this military vacuum, which was in the region, would lead to the Denikin's break in the Caucasus and conquest and the bloodshed. And in such very moment, old friend of Oliver Wardrobe and the prominent Georgian nationalist Valam Cherkezishvili sent a letter to him. And I'll quote, if England will send a man like yourself who knows Georgia and its good and bad characteristics as a representative, all misunderstanding will disappear and our good-hearted but hot-headed people will be devoted to England or to United States. After reading Cherkezishvili's letter, Lord Curzon decided to dispatch Wardrobe in capacity of His Majesty's High Commissioner to Transcaucasia, and Curzon minuted. Mr. Wardrobe's extensive personal experience of Georgia and the Georgians while his long consular service in Russia makes him particularly fitted to carry out such a mission. Dr. Jones made some told you about the biography of Wardrobe, but I will also say a couple of words about it. He was born on 10th of October 1868 in East London in the Scottish family of Thomas Wardrobe and Marjorie Scott. He spent his first 5 years in London, and then from 5 to 9 years he was living together with Scotland. He was studying in Paris, then in Decent, Germany, and then at Balliol College in Oxford. His supervisor was well-known diplomat and historian Lord Bright, who provoked his interest in the Caucasus. Then Wardrop studied in Sorbonne in 1885-1886, and then after graduation, he started his tour to the eastern countries, and that's how he came to Georgia. And luckily, he met here and he became friends with the Georgian intelligentsia, as you can call them, and particularly with the informal leader of Georgian moderate nationalist Ilia. Since then, after that, he joined the Foreign Service of British Foreign Office, and but he particularly wanted to get the position in Batumi, because in Batumi was the only Georgian town at the time where Great Britain had consular service, because in Tiflis they didn't have one. And in 1894, he went to Constantinople in order to secure the interview with the British ambassador, who could grant him a position in Batumi. And he was writing to his sister Marjorie about it. "All my hopes are settled upon next Sunday evening. If I could only get some post of the meanest kind, I should be overjoyed. But I foresee all the difficulties." The interview was ineffective. He didn't get position, but then he wrote Marjorie once again, "I do not intend to give up the hope of securing Batumi someday." Then saddened Marjorie wrote him back, "I sincerely hope that Mr. Stevens, I think that is the name of the consul at Batumi, will get advancement he no doubt deserves, and leave vacant for us the one post we want." But 25 years after Stevens still was the British consul in Batumi. In 19th century it was possible to happen. I hope for you, Mr. Geddes, that it will not happen at the end.
It wouldn't be so bad.
Okay, and then in 1919, Stevens still served as a consul in Batumi, as I already mentioned. So on July 22nd, Curzon informed him that he was moving under the command of Wardrop. Most probably, Wardrop was the happiest one to have this news, and he wrote to his wife that this is the harvesting time of my life. But Wardrop, being the clerk of the Foreign Office in 1907, helped his old friend Roland Cherkezishvili to present a petition of the Georgian people to the Hague International Conference. And much more than that, in 1918 he helped Georgian diplomats to secure the visa and entrance into Foreign Office and to establish their links. So then on 30th of August 1919, Wardrop arrived in Georgia, and he wired to Foreign Office about the meeting organized by Georgians for him. "All my movements were cinematographed, and I was the prey of photographers. Bands played the British national anthem at the railway station. Opera and Magnificent House was placed at my disposal. For about 2 miles, my route was decorated with flags and oriental carpets, and lined with onlookers. Public windows were illuminated in the evening. The day was held as a holiday. The extraordinary reception accorded to me is due to the fact that Georgians are aware of the affection I have felt for them during the last 32 years. They see my appointment to this post as a sign that His Majesty's government are inspired by most friendly feelings towards their country, and that a new era has begun for Georgia." Lord Curzon, having read this report, minute it a very good beginning. So since his arrival, he was sending 2-3 telegrams per week to the Foreign Office with the heading urgent or very urgent. Then all the misunderstanding between Georgian government and the Brits disappeared at once, because he was notifying British side all these concerns of Georgian people and the government. Then he was demanding from the Foreign Office international recognition of Georgia, which made his immediate superior, head of the chief of the Eastern Department, to say, Wardrobe bombards us with his lengthy report about the request to recognize the Republics of the Caucasus. When he arrived in the country, he immediately demanded inspection of the British troops who were deployed at that time in Batumi, and this caused, evidently, clashes between Wardrobe and Milne, because Wardrobe was saying that Denikin's influence prevails in Batumi, and that British troops and British generals are actually destroying the reputation of Great Britain. About because of the content of Wardrobe's telegrams, Churchill complained to Curzon, and they later replied, the Caucasian states who are struggling to preserve their independence know that they have no worse or formidable foe than Denikin, and that the moment he is free, he will smash them. They therefore take advantage of him in his absence. If Denikin and his myrmidons will leave the Caucasus alone, all will be well. But if he persists in trying for Batumi, Baku, etc., he inevitably comes up against people whom it is our policy to support. A revived Russia spreading over the entire Caucasus into North Persia is not a portent that I should welcome. So that was very clear stand of the Foreign Office that was supportive to the Georgian and the Caucasian independence. More than that, then Wardrobe started fighting for the started his diplomatic struggle for the territorial integrity of Georgia. He became friends with the leader of the Georgian party in Batumi region. And when I say Batumi region, I don't mean only nowadays Ajara region, but the country which then included Batumi region is slightly more south than the current Georgian border. And he became very good friends with the leader of the Georgian party in Batumi, Mehmet Abashidze, and Wardrobe was forwarding Abashidze's memorandums to the Foreign Office with his supportive comments that the Batumi should inevitably become Georgian. And then with regards to Abkhazia, in Denikin's headquarters in Ekaterinodar, which is nowadays Krasnodar, there was residing and serving Abkhazian Captain Khasaya. So this Khasaya was sending to British Foreign Office and the Paris Peace Conference memorandums on behalf of Abkhazian people. And then British Foreign Office inquired Wardrobe, is it true that the Abkhazians do not want to live together with Georgians? And then reply of Wardrobe was very clear that she made it very clear that Abkhazians got culture from Georgia, and all would be good and very smooth if just Denikin left alone these people. And Wardrobe was also very anxious to remove label of the pro-German and radical leftist from the Georgian government, and he was sending political portraits of Georgian government members to the Foreign Office. And his tireless work finally yielded a result on December 24, 1919, when Lord Curzon submitted a memorandum about Transcaucasia to the Cabinet of Ministers. In this 13-page memorandum, Curzon attentive reader could recognize extracts from the Wardrobe reports. The reports indicated that the Batumi region had, the memorandum indicated that the Batumi region had always historically been part of Georgia until it was conquered by Turkey. Curzon's memorandum was the first international document to label Russian action of 1801, when Georgia became part of Russia, as the annexation of Georgia. As the existence of Georgian statehood since the pre-Christian era was also noted, as well as the role of Georgians in the Crusade movement. Curzon also recalled the submission of the petition of Georgian people to the Hague Conference of 1907, to which Wardrop contributed a lot. While speaking about the current situation, Curzon noted that, as the recent reports have shown, Georgia had the most experienced government in the region. They were more civilized than their neighbors, and they had European roots. They suppressed all kinds of Bolshevik activities and could offer resistance to the Denikin propaganda operating under the cover of the British administration. But then, at the end of 1919 and at the beginning of 1920, Denikin was crushed by Bolsheviks. Then Bolsheviks became neighbors with the Transcaucasia, and then Wardrop fell in panic. He felt that if nothing was done, Bolsheviks would overrun Georgia and the whole Transcaucasia. And then he started sending every day, or sometimes twice or three times a day, memorandums, telegrams and reports to the Foreign Office asking for the immediate help, otherwise the Caucasus would be lost. Then Lord Curzon brought these ideas, and Lloyd George, Prime Minister of Great Britain, brought these ideas at the Paris Peace Conference, where Prime Ministers of Great Britain, France, and Italy were gathered, and this decision went through. Georgia was recognized as, de facto recognized as independent state, and it was Oliver Wardrop who notified about this decision Georgian government. And then he wired how Georgians celebrated the recognition of independence. Recognition aroused great patriotic demonstration in Tiflis. Within an hour of announcement, the city was flagged, traffic stopped, offices, shops, and factories closed. Whole garrison with cavalry and artillery marched past my house, cheering, and then at the palace. The Prime Minister and I witnessed a parade joined by trade unions and population of all classes. The Prime Minister and Minister for Foreign Affairs made patriotic, anti-Bolshevik and strongly pro-British speeches to an enormous crowd. I received continuous ovations during the day and was carried on the shoulders of the crowd to my motor car. The city was illuminated, and there was a great pro-British demonstration at the opera, followed by a banquet with numerous pro-British speeches lasted from 11 p.m. yesterday till after 4 a.m. today. You can imagine that how much Georgians were drinking at that moment. Then Georgian heroine Mara Makashvili, who died in a battle against Russia, noted in her diary, Mr. Oliver congratulated them and wished them a long life. He said in Georgian, "Long live beloved Georgia." And Colonel Stokes, who was Wardrop's representative in Baku, sent him a letter. I do not think I can begin my letter better than by offering you my heartiest congratulations on seeing your hopes for Georgia fulfilled, and on your good fortune in being in Tiflis when the good news arrived. Then Wardrop became very emotional. He was a lot affected. He wrote to the wife, "This is one of the happiest days of my life. What I hoped for 30 years has come to pass." On the celebration banquet, he was placed on the honorary place between Georgian Prime Minister and the Patriarch. On another banquet, he was placed between Georgian Prime Minister and Armenian Prime Minister, which made the other allied envoys in the Caucasus very jealous. For example, French High Commissioner wired to the French Foreign Ministry that Wardrop behaves here as a viceroy, and all Georgians are thankful only to him, but not at all to us. Because he didn't do for this country as much as World did. That's very simple. And then on the banquet, about the banquet, he wrote to the wife, "For over 4 hours I was the object of speeches of the most complimentary kind. Among the toasts was one for you and the children. It was altogether the most extraordinary day I have ever spent." And then on the other banquet, and then he ended his letter with words, "If you want things very much, you seem to get them, even though you may have to wait a long time. And I do not mind having had to wait 33 years for yesterday." And he finally concluded, "I have made a success of this mission, and my life has had a great triumph which no mishaps in the future can wholly destroy. I have had my day." And then Georgians from various quarters of the country, all the simple people, not government, but the simple people gathered all around and adopted the petition and sent him letters in Georgian where they addressed him as Brother Oliver, Mr. Oliver, let me greet you not as a British person, but as a son of Georgia. He was granted recognition at that time, which was forgotten throughout the 70 years of Soviet rule, which we are trying now to revive. And then in February, anyway, British War Office was absolutely disinterested of the region, and in absence of Lord Curzon, who was on his leave, out of the country, Churchill made the decision to evacuate from Batumi. It meant that region would be absolutely deserted from British forces, and the Soviet occupation would become inevitable. At that moment, Oliver Wardrobe made ultimatum to the Foreign Office. He actually put under the menace his own career. He said that he would resign at once if the decision was not revoked. Then he was so much frustrated that he wrote to his wife, "You have probably heard that things are going badly with Denikin. He's evidently finished, and the Bolsheviks will take what is left of the old Russia, except Transcaucasia, out of which they can be kept if the Allies, and especially Great Britain, will behave sensibly. But as you know, I have no faith in the intelligence of the government. I do not suppose Lloyd George knows where the Caucasus is, and even if he knows, he is judging from a speech he made in February, is incompletely informed about the political aspect of the Transcaucasian question. Lord Curzon, however, knows all about it, and I hope his influence may prevail over that of his colleagues, especially Churchill." This decision was revoked. Lord Curzon, after coming back from the leave, wired to Wardrobe that he had full support from the Foreign Office, and Curzon would do his utmost to keep British forces in Transcaucasia. But unfortunately, Wardrobe became ill with pneumonia, and from March 30th until the April 16th, he was chained to the bed, and he wrote to the wife that he did more harm with being inactive than could bring any positive for the Caucasian affairs. And then some cancerous growth was found on his shoulder, and he was operated. So British Foreign Office was very reluctant to evacuate him, but they had no other choice. He was evacuated. And he was planning to move, after recovery, he was planning to move to Paris in order to help Georgian cause from the epicenter of international events, but unfortunately it took a year for him to recover, and after a year Georgia was already occupied. So he was granted by the United Kingdom, the title was the Knight of British Empire, and he became Sir Oliver Wardrobe, and he was helping Georgian cause, Georgian culture, and Georgian studies in Great Britain until his death. He's buried in Sevenoaks, in Sevenoaks in the Kentshire. And yeah, nowadays what we are planning to do, now I'm editing a book on him, bilingual, in Georgian and in English, but what I also intend to do is to take and edit a film with the title of On the Footprints of Wardrobes, because I had a communication correspondence with the wardrobe family, and they have all the wardrobe's private archives, and there might be found a lot of new photographs of him and also documents which are not kept in official correspondence or in a correspondence with his wife. So we're going to find out much more if we get those archives, and at the same time I want to go to the place where he was coming from in Midlothians, then going down to London, taking the films, filming the house where he was living, then going to the Sevenoaks to find which one was the family house of wardrobes, because nowadays we don't know in Sevenoaks which one was the house. And then to gather all the descendants of all your wardrobes and ask them to retell the stories which they heard in the family from their ancestors. And for this we are looking for funding, and if anyone is ready to contribute for this, we'll be a lot grateful. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much. I made you tired, I think, because I had a very long speech. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Beka, very much for a very, very interesting presentation. And in the end, since this is an event of American-Georgian collaboration, so to say, I would ask our guest, the Deputy Ambassador of the United Kingdom, Jонсі, to say a few words to us.
For you. Thank you, Beka. I think I now feel doubly inadequate standing here before you. I think, firstly, to Beka, whose presentation was absolutely fabulous. I've certainly learned a huge amount about a man about which I knew very, very little. I'm ashamed to say. But Beka, thank you for that. Most entertaining, most illuminating. I think you would understand also if I said I felt slightly inadequate against Sir Oliver Wardrobe. I stand here as an extremely humble British diplomat, having heard about the wonderful life and works and love that Sir Oliver had for Georgia. He truly is a remarkable man, and I stand here feeling extremely humble indeed. He and I have, I think, only a few similarities. One of which is that I've been in the Foreign Office, British Foreign Office, for approximately 30 years. If I'd achieved as much as he achieved in his time, I think I'd be a very, very happy man. Despite what my son might think about my age, I can assure you that I didn't actually serve at the same time as Sir Oliver Wardrobe. I think our careers are about 100 years apart. Although my son once asked me, in ancient times, Daddy, when you were a child, it does make me father rather than perhaps I look. We share a common heritage also. I didn't realise that Sir Oliver Wardrobe had Scottish ancestry, and I too have Scottish ancestry. And any British diplomat that seems to make the French jealous is a good chap. Please don't quote me on that. Okay, looking to bring us up to date slightly then, 100 years on. I think Britain's commitment to Georgia is as strong as ever. I didn't have a band playing and flags waving as I drove here this evening, but I can assure you that we're still as committed to Georgia and Georgia's independence as Oliver ever was. We're an extremely busy embassy. We're quite a small embassy, but we're quite a busy embassy. What I'd like to do now is just give you a very brief flavour of the kind of work that we're involved in here in Tbilisi. Of course, one of our main priorities is foreign policy, security and defence. As you would imagine, this is a strategically very interesting area for us, given the local neighbourhood. You know what I'm talking about. So we're very keen to maintain a very constructive political relationship with the Georgian government. We're delighted, obviously, to see that Georgia's current trajectory is towards the EU, and we're part of that group that has really welcomed the signature of the association agreement. And obviously looking to support that and all the work that's involved around that. And with that also the trajectory that Georgia has expressed towards travelling towards NATO. That is something that we believe strongly in. And we were great supporters of Georgia at the NATO summit and the comprehensive package that they were given there. No, it's not NATO membership, but who knows where it will lead to. We're very conscious that there are troubles in this area. We are great supporters of the process that is ongoing to try and resolve the situations in South Ossetia and in Abkhazia. And we have a team of people working in the embassy on regional conflict issues that are looking to try and progress that. We've also been part of making a monetary contribution to some activities towards stabilisation in the region. We're great supporters of the EU monetary mission, many of them are British. And we've contributed sizable funds to demining activities here also. We also have a very vibrant defence section within the embassy, and we have a representative from the British Ministry of Defence working hand in hand with the Georgian Ministry of Defence to look at reforms there. We're also involved in a number of training programs with the Ministry of Defence. So international security is a big feature for us, and indeed, as you can imagine, is a big feature for the Georgian government too. We have a strong political and economic section. We've had a number of visitors from the UK here in the past year or so. Some of you might remember that we had the Foreign Secretary, as he was then, came out to see us, William Hague, around the time of the association agreement signature. We've had the President of Georgia in the UK, and we've had the now Foreign Minister visiting the UK, and we're hoping that we'll have many more of those visits. And I suppose appropriately, the last high-profile visit to the United Kingdom by Georgian government officials was for a UK-Georgia bilateral dialogue, which was christened the Wardrop Dialogue. So what a better way than to commemorate such the relationship between the UK and Georgia. We're strong on our human rights profile too. We are looking at rule of law in Georgia. We've been keen to see the progress that has been made, but we're aware too that there are other things that can be done around minority rights, rights of the lesbian gay community, etc., etc. And that's something that we're working very closely with NGOs here on also, together with a number of other diplomatic missions. We're keen on education and culture. Some of you might be familiar with the British Council, it's an arm of the British government, and the language training that they do. I'm told they're a tad expensive, but I will make a plug for them. They are probably the best. You pay for what you get on them. And they've had a tremendously successful education and language training program here, something that we're hoping will continue. We provide visa and consular services here too for Georgians looking to go to the UK and for Brits who are in Georgia. Many of you, if you've been to the UK, will know that the visa service has changed slightly. It used to be located within the embassy. It's now an outsourced service, but we hope that the service hasn't reduced. It's had a few teething problems, any of you that have applied for UK visas, but it's something that we're working on to try and improve. We offer consular support to British nationals. I see a couple in the audience. In terms of their life here too, in terms of passport facilities and that kind of thing, and difficulties that they might have that we can possibly help them with. But I think for me, what I enjoy most is being part of the Georgian culture. We heard from Beka that although was a lover of wine, women and song, I think Georgia is very famous for these. My wife would say that I should concentrate on 2 of those and not the third. Yes, I like singing, I like drinking wine. It is a fantastic place to serve. Whether I will be lucky enough to spend 25 years here, I doubt. It would be very nice. My posting will be limited to rather less than that. But one could easily see why Sir Oliver would spend such a time here and would be such a strong supporter of Georgia. That's something that we look to continue. Whether we can continue it in such the form that he continued it, I don't know. But we will do our best. And hopefully, with your support, the British Embassy will continue to be a strong part of the political and economic life in Georgia and the diplomatic life too. Thank you very much indeed.
In the end, I would like to thank all of you for having finding some time to attend this event, and I would like to ask you to just have a brochure. We prepared a special brochure, a small publication about Oliver Wardrop, which is bilingual. It's published in Georgian and English, so you're more than likely to pick them up. And in the end, we would like to invite you, all of you, to the reception with a special bottle of wine dedicated to Oliver Wardrop.
I think that we forgot to show you who was Oliver Wardrop, because I brought here numerous photos, but still we forgot to display. Okay, got it.
I intended to have this slideshow during his speech, so sorry for forgetting that.
This is Marjorie.
This is Marjorie. I guess Beka didn't mention that in 5 years there will be Marjorie.
Yeah, in 5 years there will be 150 years anniversary of Marjorie.
So I hope we will have enough.
And I hope you are going to be here 5 years after.